All right, welcome back. This time we are going through part 3 of Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings. So, I've got a lot on my mind. Part 3, it feels like things are really shaping up, heating up. It's all coming together, and a friend of mine is saying to prepare for the Sanderlanche. I've never said that out loud before, the Sanderlanche. Apparently, the ends of his books are known for being well worth the wait. So I feel like the book is weaving a really interesting narrative around morality at this point. We've got different things going on with Shallan, Kaladin, and then this backstory with Szeth. And instead of trying to talk about them all separately, I think that they're all mirroring each other in a particular way. We have Shallan, and she's with Jasnah, and obviously she's there because she wants to steal the Fabrial for her family. Jasnah is taking her in as her ward, teaching her. Now, Shallan's torn between her love for gaining knowledge and this idea that she could steal the Fabrial and take it back home to her family. That alone, I think, is this dichotomy between short and long-term goals, short-term and long-term fulfillment. You see, she could stay and she could gain all of this knowledge that she has. She does not have access to this level, this amount, and this quality of knowledge anywhere else in her life except in her current circumstance. She could stay there and in theory become much more powerful through all of that knowledge than she could with the more short-term goal of just stealing the Fabrial and going back home. Indeed, even if she does have the Fabrial, at which point she does take it from Jasnah, she doesn't even know how to use it. She doesn't have that knowledge. She hasn't developed to the point where she could be as powerful as she could be, as useful as she could be for her family overall. So that alone is like a microcosm of this idea of, is it worth you trying to pursue this short-term goal that's going to give you more immediate gratification versus the long haul where you're being consistent and working hard at improving yourself day to day so that you can really reach your full potential. Regardless, Jasnah takes her on this little journey at night to bring about this philosophical question of morality. She essentially baits these men into attacking them at night, and she kills them in self-defense. And Shallan's mortified by this. She's saying, well, essentially you baited them into it knowing that they would come and then you would kill them. So the blood is on your hands, Jasnah, from Shallan's perspective. And Jasnah's like, well, is it? I want you to, research different philosophical points of view and get back to me with your thoughts. Meanwhile, we have Kaladin, and we're going more and more through his backstory, which is fascinating. I really enjoy the way it's written. This whole idea of what took place with him and his brother and getting drafted into the war just when he was ready to let that dream go and become a surgeon. It all gets undone again. He ends up becoming a soldier after all, and he kills a shard bearer. And that's like everyone's dream. He has the opportunity in that moment to take the shard blade, and with that he would have the power and indeed the responsibility, but the power to do so much good that he wants to do. He could really be there for his fellow soldiers, for the people he cares about in his life. He could really provide for others, but he has this idea that if he takes it, he's going to be like the Light Eyes, and he resents them. So he resents the idea of taking part in what they've done, taking part in the power of this shard blade. But at the end of the day, he's absolving himself of taking on this responsibility that could be so useful for others. So he's choosing to be weaker so that he doesn't have to deal with the consequences of taking on all that responsibility. So that alone is a moral question. I think that, to make it more clear, on one side with Shallan, the question is there guilt by omission? If you know that you have the power to take evil out of the world, then by seeking it out and destroying it, have you done something wrong by actively taking part in destroying that evil, taking those men's lives, those men that would have robbed them or worse, is that wrong because you, of your own volition, went out of your way to make that chain of events take place? Versus Kaladin, on the flip side, the mirror image of this, is it wrong for him to avoid the responsibility of taking that shard blade so that he doesn't have to know what it feels like to hold that much power, and know that he can no longer sit with that much power and not actively take place in trying to make the world a more just environment for everyone else, all the people that he knows and loves? And so it forces the question of is there morality or is there guilt in sitting back and just watching things unfold? It's scary to think about that in real life and think about your own personal responsibility to put yourself out there, to interject yourself into the world and take part in what's going on to try to make things better. Because what if you mess up? What if you actually make things worse? But just sitting on the sidelines and sitting it all out and letting things unfold and seeing things go wrong that you could have done something about, then is that guilt on your hands all the same? So the book, I believe, between the two of them, it's showing that there are different ways of looking at morality. But at the end of the day, I think there's one single answer to how to conduct yourself in a moral way. And I think that it's essentially the classic story. You have to, all things considered, to simplify it, get out of your comfort zone, sitting back and choosing to just be weak of character, weaker than you should be, so that you can say that nothing is your fault, is just as immoral as taking place in the wrong side of things, versus taking the shard blade, taking on that responsibility and using it for good, versus knowing that you have the power to rid the world of the evil and putting yourself in a position to do so. But at what point does it cross a line? Say Kaladin were to take the shard blade, and what if he pushed it too far? That's where the question really gets ambiguous, and I think that's where a lot of people become afraid of what they might do or who they may become. But you can't sit back and avoid it altogether. You're no better for doing that. And finally, we have Zeth, and I think his story is essentially, it's crystal clear. He, like the Nazis in Germany, essentially, is killing the people at this feast and killing the king with tears streaming down his eyes, thinking how he doesn't want to do it, but he's the one doing it. He's essentially taking all of the responsibility and putting it on whoever has commanded him to do these things, because for whatever reason, I still don't know yet, at this point in the story, he feels as though he has to obey no matter what. And I believe that he's avoiding some of that guilt and responsibility by saying, well, it's not really his decision, it's someone else making him do it. But at the end of the day, he's really doing it. And Stoic philosophy says, essentially, you can't make me do anything. At the end of the day, what I do is my responsibility, and if it's good, then I take responsibility for that. If it's bad, then I take responsibility for that. But there's no cop out by saying, well, so-and-so made me do this, or so-and-so made me say this, or so-and-so made me act this way. That's invalid. And Zeth, his story is painting a very clear picture of that so far. If we look at these three different character arcs through this lens of this narrative that's being built around morality, and how do we look at it and how do we work within that. So overall, a lot of interesting things going on. At this point, Shallan is she going to go back to her family? I'm not exactly sure yet. Yasna's essentially going to ship her away. Unanswered questions. Why did Yasna not make any mention of her Fabrial not working for all this time? I have an idea. I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, but maybe the broken Fabrial that Shallan swapped out wasn't really broken if you knew how to fix it or knew how to still work with it. Maybe Yasna had the knowledge to do that, and so she didn't notice that it was broken, or maybe there's something else. I'm not totally attached to the idea, but it just kind of went through my head. And then we've got Kaladin, and he's going to work to train up the Bridge 4 crew to fight back, which I think is awesome. I think that of all the different things that could have happened, I'm happy with that. I'm also happy that so far in this story, as I've mentioned a few times, I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, and that makes it more enjoyable to read. I hate when books or movies or shows or things are totally predictable, because then it's like, well, what's the point of the journey? So far with these different characters, things are building in one direction, and as soon as you start to really believe that that's the way it's heading, something will happen and it'll unravel unexpectedly, and that makes for a really good story and narrative. So we're about to get into part 4, and I'm excited to see, what the big ending is going to be for this book, because I understand we've already got essentially once this new one comes out, 4 more books already written. So in no way does this need to be like the end of the story. So I'm wondering what's going to be the big moment for the end of this particular book. Is it going to be some big war, or what's it going to be? We're going to find out. Really enjoyable. So that's part 3 of Way of Kings. Let me know what you think about these ideas surrounding morality and the different characters in the comments below, if you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts on that. And I'll see you in the next one. See ya.